The camera lingers on a single black and white photograph hanging crooked on a cracked plaster wall. In it, a proud young woman in a crisp navy dress uniform stares straight ahead, her eyes burning with the kind of fire that only 20-year-olds who have already seen war can possess. The gold trim of her chief petty officer's insignia glints under the flash. Beneath the photo, written in faded marker on the frame, are the words, Eleanor May Robinson, Persian Gulf, 1991, never again. Then the lens pulls back, and the silence is shattered by the slow, deliberate creak of a mansion door opening at 3 in the morning. A barefoot woman, in a simple cotton nightgown, steps into the marble hallway, one trembling hand cradling a belly so round it seems impossible for her thin frame to carry it. Her silver hair is loose, cascading over shoulders that once carried the weight of body bags and burning flight decks. She is 85 years old. She is 8.5 months pregnant, and the child inside her kicks hard enough to make her gasp. This is Eleanor, and this is the night everything the world thought they knew about her is about to burn. The year is 2025, and the country is still arguing over the photograph that broke the internet 3 days ago. Eleanor, in a Victorian morning gown of all things, standing alone in the gilded parlor of the Beaumont estate while the 25-year-old tech billionaire, Julian Beaumont, kneels at her feet, kissing the swell beneath layers of lace as though it were sacred. The caption, posted by Julian himself, reads simply, "My family, my future, my queen." The comments exploded with venom, with memes, with accusations no human being should ever have to read. Gold digger, disgusting, has been trafficked, she's a witch, and worse, much worse. But none of them know what happened in that house on the night the storms knocked the power out for 12 straight hours. None of them know why Eleanor, who had not taken a single day off in 41 years of service to the Beaumont family, suddenly stopped wearing her starched black maid's dress with the white apron and started wearing Julian's Harvard sweatshirts, stretched tight across a belly that appeared, impossibly, overnight. To understand, we have to go back 4 years, to the night Julian came home from Stanford with hollow eyes and a bottle of pills he never intended to swallow. His parents had died in a private jet crash 6 weeks earlier, leaving him 21 years old and master of a fortune he never wanted. The staff kept their distance. Everyone did. Everyone except Eleanor, who had been cleaning Beaumont silver since before Julian was born, who had changed his diapers when his mother was too strung out on painkillers to notice he was crying, who had stood at parade rest in the kitchen while 3 generations of Beaumont men shouted at one another over inheritance and legacy, and who deserved what? On the night Julian almost ended it all, Eleanor found him on the roof of the East Wing, barefoot in the January cold, staring down at the gardens 6 stories below. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply climbed the fire escape in her housecoat and sat beside him, 2 feet from the edge, and started talking about the time in 1991 when her destroyer took a direct hit from an Iraqi silkworm missile, and she carried a 19-year-old sailor with no legs through fire so hot it melted the soles of her boots. She told him how the kid lived because she refused to let him die, and how she still gets Christmas cards from his daughter every year. Then she looked Julian dead in the eye and said, "You are not the first Beaumont to stand on this ledge, baby boy. And you won't be the last unless somebody loves you harder than your money ever did. Get down from there. I'm making cocoa." He cried that night for the first time since the funeral. She held him the way she once held that sailor, arms like steel cables wrapped around shaking ribs, whispering, "I got you, Chief, I got you." That was the beginning. Over the next 4 years, the mansion slowly emptied of staff. People retired. People moved on. People couldn't handle the way Julian followed Eleanor from room to room like a shadow. The way he begged her to sit down when her knees ached. The way he learned to iron his own shirts because he didn't want her lifting the heavy board anymore. The tabloids called it the strangest friendship in America. They had no idea. Eleanor's body had been through hell long before Julian was born. Shrapnel in 91 shredded her reproductive system. Doctors told her in a Kuwaiti field hospital that she would never carry a child. She laughed in their faces, because she had already decided children weren't in God's plan for her. She buried herself in work, in service, in keeping the Beaumont family afloat when every other person in their orbit only wanted to bleed them dry. She became the invisible spine of the house. And for 41 years, that was enough. Then came the night of the storm. The power was out. The generators failed. The temperature in the unheated mansion dropped into the 30s. Julian found Eleanor in the library, shivering in front of a fireplace that refused to draw, clutching the same navy photo she kept in her room. She was crying. Eleanor never cried. He wrapped her in a blanket, carried her to the master bedroom, because it was the only room with a working gas fireplace, and laid her down like she was made of blown glass. She told him that night about the sailor she saved, about the letter she got last month from his daughter saying thank you, again, 34 years later, about how sometimes she woke up screaming because she could still smell burning jet fuel, about how she was tired, bone tired, of being the strong one everybody leaned on while nobody ever leaned back. Julian listened. Then he did something no one had ever done for Eleanor May Robinson in her entire life. He laid his head on her chest, right over her heart that had survived war and grief and 8 decades of being told she wasn't enough. And he whispered, "Let me carry you now." What happened next was not planned. It was not transactional. It was not some grotesque fetish born of money and desperation. It was 2 broken people recognizing the only safe harbor they had ever known was each other. It was grief meeting gratitude. It was surrender. It was salvation. And 9 months later, against every law of medicine, of nature, of probability itself, Eleanor's body, the one that had been declared barren and ruined by military surgeons, began to grow a child. The doctors called it a miracle. The tabloids called it fraud. Julian called it proof that love can rewrite biology. The twist the world never saw coming was this: the child is not Julian's. When Eleanor was 23 years old, serving on the USS Saratoga, she fell in love with a Marine Corps pilot named Isaiah Washington. They were young, reckless, and believed the war would never touch them. One night in port in Bahrain, they conceived a son. 3 weeks later, Isaiah's F-18 was shot down over Iraq. His body was never recovered. Eleanor, bleeding from shrapnel wounds herself, miscarried in a Navy hospital and was told the damage was permanent. She locked the grief away in the same box where she kept Isaiah's dog tags, the same box she never opened again. Until the night of the storm, Julian, holding her, felt the chain around her neck. He asked what it was. She told him. She opened the box for the first time in 62 years and showed him the tiny silver dog tags, still stained with desert sand. She told him about the son she never got to hold, and in that moment, something shifted inside her body that science still cannot explain. The doctors say scar tissue dissolved. They say dormant follicles woke up. They say whatever happened defies everything they know about reproductive endocrinology in an 85-year-old woman. Eleanor says Isaiah came back, just for a moment, to give her the family she was cheated out of all those decades ago. Julian's response was not jealousy. It was awe. He fell to his knees and thanked a man he never met for the privilege of helping raise his son. The child, a boy they have already named Isaiah Julian Beaumont Robinson, is due any day now. The mansion has been transformed. The nursery is painted the same blue as a navy dress uniform. There is a shadow box on the wall containing 3 sets of dog tags, Isaiah Sr.'s, Eleanor's, and a tiny pair waiting for the day little Isaiah earns his own. Eleanor no longer wears the maid's uniform. She wears soft cotton dresses and Julian's oversized cardigans. She sits in the garden she tended for 41 years and feels her son, her miracle, kick against the same hands that once dragged men out of burning helicopters. And Julian, the boy who once stood on a ledge ready to die, now measures his life in the strength of her heartbeat and the flutter of tiny feet against his palm. The world still rages online. They still call her names. They still say he's brainwashed, that it's gross, that it's impossible. Let them. They will never understand what it means to survive hell, only to find heaven in the arms of the person who was always there, waiting. Because this is not a story about an old maid and a young millionaire. This is the story of a warrior who was never allowed to come home from the war until the war finally came looking for her and said, "Ma'am, your leave has been approved. Your family is waiting." The camera pulls back one final time as Eleanor stands on the grand staircase, one hand on her belly, the other clutching Julian's fingers like they are the only thing tethering her to earth. Sunlight pours through the stained glass window above them, painting her silver hair in a halo of red, gold, and blue. She looks like a queen who has finally been given her crown, and somewhere, in a place beyond time, a young marine pilot with movie star wings pinned to his chest smiles down and salutes the strongest woman he ever knew. This is their truth. This is their triumph. This is their forever. So I want to ask you, what is the measure of a life? Is it the years we're given, or the love we're brave enough to claim? Would you have the courage to love like this, against every odd, every voice telling you it's wrong, every rule saying it's impossible? Drop your thoughts below. No judgment here, only truth. If this story moved you, if it made you believe again in miracles dressed up as ordinary people, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to remember that love doesn't care about calendars, and subscribe because there are more stories coming, stories about the warriors among us who never get medals, only miracles. Until next time, keep fighting for your miracle. It's fighting for you too.